Along the coastlines of Scandinavia, wooden structures have endured salt spray, freeze-thaw cycles, fungal attack and relentless wind for over 1,000 years. Harbour pilings, ship timbers, roof beams and stave churches survive conditions that destroy modern pressure-treated lumber in just a few decades. This durability was not accidental, nor was it the result of primitive luck. It came from a deliberate preservation system developed by Viking Age builders who understood wood as a living material that must be guided, not sealed or poisoned. For thermal vault viewers who value tested historical methods over industrial shortcuts, this Viking preservation method remains one of the most effective ever used. Why the Viking system focused on controlling moisture instead of fighting rot directly? Viking builders understood that wood does not rot because it is old, but because it stays wet. Decay organisms need prolonged moisture, oxygen and nutrients to survive. Instead of trying to kill fungi with chemicals, Vikings designed their entire preservation strategy around preventing those conditions from existing in the first place. So their approach removed moisture quickly, limited nutrient availability, and allowed wood to breathe, season after season. This philosophy explains why their structures aged slowly and predictably rather than failing suddenly, which is quite remarkable if you think about it. Why timber selection was the first preservation decision? It's really the foundation of everything that followed. The process began long before a single tool touched the wood. Vikings, you see, had a keen eye for selecting the right materials. They favoured slow-grown pine, spruce and oak, especially from those cold or rocky soils. These trees, in particular, produce dense fibres with a high resin content, which naturally resisted water and insects. Quite a clever choice, wouldn't you say? Timber was typically felled in the depths of winter. Why, you ask? Well, during this time, sap levels were at their lowest, reducing those pesky internal sugars that attract decay organisms. A rather strategic approach indeed. Using low-sap, resin-rich wood laid a strong foundation for the preservation process. It's interesting to note that modern lumber often skips this crucial step entirely. Instead, it relies on chemical treatments to make up for poor material choices. Quite the contrast, isn't it? Now, you see, long seasoning was considered far more important than just working quickly. The patience required for this process really made all the difference. Fresh-cut timber was, rarely used straight away. Viking builders would season wood for extended periods, sometimes for years, allowing the moisture to leave slowly and evenly. This careful process hardened the resins inside the fibres and, stabilised the wood structure quite effectively. Seasoned timber, then, could absorb protective treatments much more deeply, and it resisted the sort of cracking that lets water seep in. That was absolutely crucial for durability. This patience reduced future maintenance and, prevented structural weaknesses that modern fast-dried lumber frequently develops. Why controlled surface charring was actually a critical step, not a superstition. One of the most misunderstood Viking techniques was surface charring. Fire was applied lightly to exposed surfaces, especially those facing weather or ground contact. The goal was not to burn the wood for strength, but rather to alter its chemistry. Charring converted surface carbohydrates into carbon, removing the food source for fungi and insects. It also sealed surface pores, reducing capillary water uptake while still allowing internal moisture to escape. This balance dramatically shortened the time wood remained damp after rain or snow. Archaeological timbers from Viking ships and buildings consistently show evidence of this treatment, particularly on the most vulnerable surfaces. Why pine tar transformed treated wood into a generational material? Charring alone slowed decay, but, pine tar made it permanent. Vikings produced pine tar by heating resin-rich pine in low oxygen conditions, and this process created a thick hydrophobic substance rich in antifungal compounds. When applied warm to charred wood, pine tar penetrated deep into the grain rather than just forming a brittle surface layer. Unlike modern sealants, pine tar remained flexible. It expanded and contracted with the wood during seasonal changes, which prevented cracking. And when it weathered, it thinned gradually instead of failing catastrophically, signalling the need for reapplication long before any real damage occurred. This made maintenance, predictable and simple rather than reactive and costly. Why Viking builders never sealed wood airtight? Modern preservation often fails because it traps moisture behind rigid coatings. Vikings avoided this entirely. Their treatments repelled liquid water, but allowed vapour to escape. Wood could dry naturally instead of staying damp beneath an impermeable barrier. This breathing quality explains why ancient timber often becomes harder with age. Each wet-dry cycle strengthened rather than weakened the structure. Why structural design completed the preservation system? Preservation did not end with treatment. Viking architecture, it shed water aggressively. Roofs were steep, overhangs were generous, and vertical surfaces were carefully protected from direct runoff. Timber, interestingly, rarely touched soil directly. Instead, it rested on stone bases or gravel beds that drained moisture away. Ventilation was, quite intentionally, part of the design. Airflow beneath floors and within walls prevented condensation buildup. You see, end grain is actually the most vulnerable part of wood, and the Vikings were well aware of this. They would shield it or angle it downward just to prevent water from pooling and causing damage over time. These clever design choices meant that even untreated interior wood, could remain dry and stable for centuries. It's quite remarkable how effective their methods were. Now, here's the interesting bit. This Viking method can absolutely still be applied today with a few practical steps. It's a testament to their ingenuity that such ancient wisdom remains relevant. The method remains fully usable. Start with seasoned, resin-rich wood whenever possible. Lightly char exposed or ground contact surfaces using controlled flame, avoiding deep burns. Remove loose carbon without scraping away the hardened layer. Warm pine tar until fluid and apply it generously while the wood is warm. Allow absorption rather than chasing a glossy finish. For colder climates, blending tar with natural oil improves penetration and flexibility. When installing wood, it's important, to keep airflow, elevation and water-shedding geometry in mind. And, well, remember to reapply tar periodically as part of routine maintenance, rather than waiting for any visible damage to appear. With each application, the protection doesn't just start over, it actually deepens, rather than erasing any previous work. It's a cumulative process, really. So, why does this Viking method still outperform modern products? Well, it's because the traditional approach offers a level of lasting protection that, honestly, modern solutions just can't quite match. Modern treatments, rely on toxicity and surface sealing. Viking preservation, on the other hand, relied on moisture control, material compatibility, and, maintenance visibility. One approach, really, just delays failure. The other actually prevents it. The proof, quite frankly, stands in surviving structures that have endured 1,000 winters without the aid of industrial chemistry. If this kind of tested historical knowledge matters to you, do consider subscribing to Thermal Vault and share this guide with others who care about real-world durability. The Viking preservation method still outperforms modern products because it works with nature instead of against it. And that principle, it never expires.